is fantastic. I was just talking to a buddy last week. Great baseball coverage, by the way. You were a Laker writer for 5 years now. So let's start with this. The whole Luke Walton thing is everybody sees this as combustible. And Bill, they're saying, well, you know, LeBron just wears out coaches. And I come back and I think, no, he and Ty Lue were fine. And he and Eric Spoelstra, it was fine. Is the LeBron wears out coaches Luke Walton fears overstated potentially?
I think so. I mean, you look at the history of LeBron with coaches. Mike Brown had him for 5 years, and Mike Brown ultimately got fired at the end of 2010. But that relationship was very productive. He goes to Miami. Eric Spoelstra was with him the whole time. The only time you've really seen a coach get worn out by LeBron James was David Blatt,
yes,
who was brought in to coach a completely different team than he ended up having. David Blatt, who came over from the European game, had never coached in the NBA, had a completely different experience than the one he signed up for, still ended up in the finals, by the way, but then year two ends up getting replaced by Ty Lue.
He covers the Lakers for The Athletic, which, by the way, I think it's only like $3 to $5 a month. It's really, really inexpensive. You get tremendous depth. So if you've not signed up to The Athletic, I'd like to see it work because actually you're getting really quality, high-end journalism and depth on stuff in the world of the blogosphere where it's headlines and nobody reads anything. You know, Bill, the Lakers are interesting. You know, I was talking to an NBA scout this morning who I trust. And I said, extrapolate the numbers for Kuzma and Lonzo and Ingram. Now, I think the sense, Bill, is, well, gosh, Kuzma was 16-6. He'll average 20. But my scout said, no, their numbers may come back because LeBron can be ball dominant. Lonzo Ball may not have the ball much. What is your kind of projection? LeBron's got these 4 young players, Kuzma, Ball, Brandon, and Josh Hart. It's not going to be perfect. I've got a weird feeling that the Ingram thing, he could lose his way. He won't have the ball. Tell me how you think all these young parts work. Because you know they're not all going to just be perfect. It's not the way the world works in the NBA. You have about 3 core guys. How do you think the youth and LeBron mix?
It's funny, I was talking to somebody from the Lakers recently about kind of that same thing. And there was a time when I think the Lakers just hoped that all their young players were going to be all-stars. And that's not the reality, as you said. At this point, I think they are hoping one of these guys really pops and asserts themselves as a member of a big 3, right? Like if Brandon Ingram becomes the Kevin Love of this team.
19 a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The second option, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think, especially with Brandon Ingram, I think that's worth digging into a little bit because last year he really emerged as the leader of that team. He was the vocal leader. When there were issues in the locker room, he was the guy who was standing before the media and saying, this is what happened. This is what we were saying to each other. This is why it's a problem. This is how it's going to be fixed, on and on and on. He doesn't have that role anymore. There are now at least two guys who are more prominent leaders in that locker room, LeBron James, Rajon Rondo. Those guys are used to leading and taking the bull by the horns. So I'm curious to see how Brandon Ingram responds from a leadership standpoint. But on the court, I think what we've heard the Lakers are trying to do is have multiple ball handlers, right? And they could have 5 ball handlers on the court at once.
Yeah, these guys on the screen can all handle the ball.
Right. And so the idea is the first 3 quarters, LeBron can go to the wing. He can be the trailer on fast break. Roles he didn't have in Cleveland or even in Miami when he had to be on the ball. He doesn't have to be on the ball anymore. He can be, and he will be in the fourth quarter. But in the first 3 quarters, you have Brandon Ingram who can create, run, pick, and roll. Lonzo Ball, same. Rajon Rondo who can get into the paint and dish. So I think the idea is let those guys carry the load for the first 35 minutes of the game, and then in the fourth, it's LeBron time.
Yeah, which is kind of how the NBA works. There's a handful of guys that take it over, especially if they're ball handlers. Bill Oram, the Athletic Lakers reporter. Paul George not coming here, I'm told, it did shock people.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Lead did an interesting kind of study on this. They said all the leaks were Paul George likes the Lakers. The Kawhi story came out, and those stories stopped. Perhaps spook that I don't want to be the 3rd guy in Los Angeles. That's a very fair, he knew Steven Adams is never going to be a scorer in OKC. So it's Russell's team, I'm a 2. I think he's okay with that. I do think, Paul, part of it was, okay, LeBron will be the guy. Kawhi, what am I? Even Lonzo's going to get more talk. Okay, now we have the Kawhi situation. The story this morning, oh, he's warming up to Canada. Not sure if I buy it, but the point is, how much did Paul George to OKC, did it rattle the Lakers?
They were certainly surprised. I mean, you're 100% about that. I mean, people in the Lakers headquarters that night, Magic was off having his meeting with LeBron, but they did not expect Paul George to be off the table before they could even make a phone call. That was a surprise. But in terms of whether it rattled them, I don't really think so, because I think Paul George had kind of become Plan C. And that's a big departure from a year ago where he was the primary focus. And he felt that, just like you said. He felt the desire of LA to bring him here, make him the face of the franchise. But that had dissipated a little bit because it was all about LeBron. All of a sudden, Kawhi, who is a better player than Paul George,
yes,
and is a better defender, better three-point shooter, all the things that the Lakers are building their culture around, Kawhi Leonard is better at it. And so at that point, it was Paul George went from being the guy we absolutely need to, hey, it'd be nice to get him. And so I think for them, it was disappointing, but they were able to kind of stick to their mission, which was go get LeBron James. So once that happened, it didn't really matter what Paul George had done.
What do you think Magic's expectations are this year?
Realistically, he has to know he doesn't have a championship team. I think if this team can get to the second round, show well, LeBron fits well with the pieces, and they still look attractive to free agents in 2019, then I think that's a success. It's strange knowing how Magic Johnson's wired and LeBron is wired, that they are champions and they expect to be competing for titles every year. And they do think that they have they're taking an interesting approach to the Warriors, right? Like if they can hit the Warriors with a different look, with ball handlers and tough guys, which they haven't really encountered in the West. They're not going to try to beat them at their own game with shooting threes. That's different enough that maybe something strange could happen. But this is a long game for them. They understand that turning this around in 1 year with LeBron, maybe Kawhi, but you've gutted the franchise to get him. So all of a sudden it's Kawhi, LeBron, and guys on minimums, and maybe Rondo is not sustainable. And it's also maybe still not a championship team. So what they're looking at is bring the young guys along, get deep enough in the playoffs, still be attractive in 2019, and then go add, whether it's Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson would be their dream scenario, right?
Okay,
in 2019.
Okay, Bill, let's stop there. My staff every morning. Colin, they're getting Klay.
He's not leaving.
Well, it's interesting. His father, Michael, wonderful guy, is a Laker broadcaster. Klay, if they won again, would have, 4 rings? He'd have a stack of money, and he'd have 4 rings, and he knows he doesn't have to come down here and be a star because LeBron takes care of that, and frankly, Magic takes care of that. I do think there's something there with Klay Thompson next year. You don't?
I think something would have to go sideways in Golden State.
Okay.
Like I hear you, and I've had conversations with people about the exact same thing. I mean, there's such a natural pull to him here. It's a new challenge. We hear that from guys a lot, kind of at this stage of their career. 4 rings, but he doesn't. I don't think he desires the spotlight that comes with being a Laker or being in LA. And while LeBron's the star, if you're the number 2 guy or you're the complementary piece to a championship team in LA, you are out there every day. I think in Golden State, he is able to fit the role where he is the number 3 guy and can still go out and score 62 points in 3 quarters and still kind of stay out of the limelight a little bit. I think he likes that.
Bill Oram, The Athletic, covers the Lakers, has for 5 years. A little pushback, at least on murals, from Laker fans not embracing LeBron. Chris Broussard made an interesting point the other day. He said, well, the mural did say the new king of L.A. That's a little much. There's a new mural out. I think our guys have it, which is much more respectful and tasteful and a little more, nothing against the artist, but the messaging is, gosh, I'm looking up at stars. Do you feel there'll be any pushback on LeBron when the games start?
Once the games start, I think this narrative will die pretty quickly. I mean, he's the greatest player in the NBA actively, arguably ever, and he's on your team, and you didn't have to gut your roster to get him. I mean, it seems like a pretty good scenario. So, look, I think it probably is going to take a championship for Laker fans to truly embrace him on the same level they do Kobe, Magic, Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, for them to really look at him in among that pantheon. But once he's playing in games, just to Joe Schmo, it's a Tuesday, I get to watch basketball and root for the Lakers, it's going to be pretty easy to embrace LeBron James.
Kawhi, gut feeling. Do you think he ends up here? Clipper, by the way, Clippers are going to make a run, and Jerry West is a darn good recruiter. At 80, he's still good. Your gut feeling?
My gut feeling is he ends up in Los Angeles.
Playing at Staples. Okay, so is that a Laker? I kind of have the same feeling.
I think it might be 50-50 on whether it's the Lakers or the
Billy
Clippers.
wants a shoe deal.
Yep.
You know how you get shoe deals? Being on television, LeBron's games all are, and playing in June. Like, he could go to the Clippers. I mean, my takeaway is that's how you get a shoe deal. Mm-hmm. And he's like like John Wall. Shoe deals matter. Players get petty about it. And, I'm not saying some of that's just he's kind of a reticent personality. But when Harden makes $200 million and you make $500,000, he wants a 45, 55. I think playing with LeBron can get you a shoe deal. And that may be very synthetic, but I think that matters.
I agree. It's a huge part of it, especially when he's seeing his peers who are earning whatever 10 times he does on kind of the side business deals. Absolutely matters. But being in Los Angeles, we've seen with Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, you can still build your empire with the Clippers if you're not with the Lakers. But,
yes.
But also the Lakers were terrible when they were doing that.
Good point. All right, sign up for The Athletic. It's not very much money, actually, and it's a lot of good writers. TheAthletic.com. Check it out. Bill now covers the Lakers for them. In-depth stuff in a world where we don't have enough of that. By the way, this is not even political.